Hello, angels and fellow Jocelyn stans. What an absolutely wild first episode of The Idol. There is so much to discuss, from Jocelyn and Tedros' relationship, to the commentary on the Hollywood system, to Jennie from BLACKPINK's debut in an American series. Stay tuned, and fair warning, spoilers ahead. Let's dive in. The opening shot of The Idol left me absolutely speechless, as it encapsulates and frames our protagonist's starting point in her journey. Jocelyn is a gifted performer with the ability to shapeshift and reflect the image she believes others expect from her. I don't know about you all, but my jaw was on the floor watching her switch from seductive to vulnerable and back to being a temptress, all within a few seconds at her photo shoot. During this scene, we see the rumblings of a scandal involving an intimate photo of Jocelyn having leaked online, yet this is kept from our starlet throughout the shoot and rehearsals in order to keep her performing well for those around her. I loved how this shot clearly shows the pressure and control her environment has on Jocelyn. I mean, put yourself in her shoes, because if I was in this situation, I don't know how I could handle it mentally, physically and emotionally, yet she pulls it off because she's a born and bred performer. I will get into this later in the video, so stick around as I will break down the role of the Hollywood system and the dangers of the industry in this series. Later in this scene, we're given nuggets of information about Jocelyn's mental and emotional state through the discussion of this photo by her team. You see, Jocelyn's mother passed away, and it's clear that there is a lot of pain that she hasn't processed up to this point. She's been wandering through her obligations, numbing herself through partying and performing as expected when it is asked of her, but no one is really considering the toll that all of this takes on her. Even as the star of her own brand, she's just a cog in the Hollywood machine. I really felt for her when we saw these glimpses of inner turmoil and real pain that she continues to mask. Diane, played by BLACKPINK's Jennie Ruby Jane, pleads with her to go out to a club later that night, which Jocelyn accepts after learning about her leaked photo. The car ride shots were hauntingly beautiful because you could see this emptiness inside of Jocelyn juxtaposed against this fun and wild environment as she uses the night out to escape her problems. Vulnerable and attempting to chase a good time, this leaves Jocelyn susceptible to Tedros' charms. This random chance meeting could be the thing she is searching for that she didn't know she needed. But was this encounter all that random? More on that later. Having felt this immediate connection with Tedros, Jocelyn can't stop thinking about this new man in her life, and we're given a scene that sheds some light on her inner psychology. Without getting too graphic, the series tries to raise a provocative question by shedding some light on Jocelyn's relationship with power and control. Does she find something pleasurable about being controlled, despite her awareness of the damage it does to her? Because later in the episode, she acknowledges the danger she sees in Tedros in her conversation with Leia, yet she walks into the lion's den anyway. I think that this could be the result of her mental and emotional state, having recently lost her mother, living her life as a performer, and attempting to rise up to an idea of her that she may not be aware of isn't the real her. Because we see that even her mannerisms are lifted from Sharon Tate, as she emulates her persona and habits throughout the episode, and she struggles to have an off-the-record conversation with Talia from Vanity Fair, who tries to be honest with her outside of the interview, yet Jocelyn only wants to respond when the conversation is being recorded. Who is the real Jocelyn? That's the journey we'll follow throughout this series, and I cannot wait to uncover the woman behind the facade. Unfortunately, however, this vulnerable state Jocelyn is in leads to someone like Tedros being able to walk into her life and influence our starlet. While we are initially shown that Tedros was surprised by Jocelyn being in his club, we see glimpses throughout the club montage that shows a different story. He knew she was there and wanted to craft the perfect, spontaneous moment to pull her into his web of deception and lies. My heart fell to my stomach, seeing his plan unfold as she fell deeper and deeper into his performance. In many ways, these two characters mirror each other, as we see when he is invited over to her home later in the episode. They both attempt to craft an image and an idea of who they are that they want to project to one another. We especially see this with Tedros when he recites different versions of his greeting, "Hello, Angel." Even the moments of intimacy that we see between them are questionable, as they don't present the real versions of themselves to one another. We are teased with a glimpse of what could be a real moment between the two in the final scene of the episode. This leads to that intense final shot, which I will get to later in the video. Please humor me for a moment, but I have to give my thoughts on Jennie Ruby Jane's performance. I am a massive BLACKPINK fan, and I was shocked by the announcement that Jennie would be in an HBO series directed by Sam Levinson. I thought she did a pretty solid job with her dance and acting performance so far. We don't get too much from her character in this episode, but I wonder if that is intentional, as her character seems purposefully shrouded in mystery. Her character character, Diane, seems to be the catalyst for Jocelyn's night out to the club where she later meets Tedros. Could Tedros and Diane have known each other beforehand? Could she have convinced her to go out for nefarious reasons? I wouldn't put it past Tedros, given that we see hints of his scheming and deception throughout the episode, so I guess we will have to wait and see. This is the perfect segue into the people around Jocelyn having the ability to influence any and everything she does because of the access they have to her and her trust in them. The show is emblematic of the Hollywood system and the industry chewing people up and spitting people out, which we see with Jocelyn throughout the episode. Within the first few minutes of the episode, we get the stomach-churning conversation about how Jocelyn, who is a star on the verge of a breakdown, is sexy because her mental illness is on display for the world to consume. Before we go further, let's do a quick rundown of her team. Leia is Jocelyn's best friend and assistant. Xander is her creative director. Dan Levy's character is her publicist. Haim and Destiny are her co-managers. Nikki Katz is a record label executive, and Andrew Finkelstein is a Live Nation representative. And rounding out the cast is Talia from Vanity Fair, who represents the media and press in the series. That was a mouthful, but do you see how there is a whole village of people around Jocelyn that control what she sees, what she does, and what she says? They can even control when she finds out about her own scandals and withhold that information from her so that she can continue to generate money for them. Although the focus may be on Tedros leading her down a destructive path, the rest of her team aren't any better. Well, maybe Leia is the odd one out who could be a good influence, but she's also paid to say and do whatever Jocelyn needs to hear. There isn't anyone genuinely on her side looking out for her best interests, which is the real tragedy behind the role these characters play in the series. They create the pressure Jocelyn feels, the image and brand she is expected to live up to, and the narrative she has to play along with. That is why, when we get to the final scene between Jocelyn and Tedros, it becomes crystal clear that she is desperate for connection and authenticity. Let me know what you think, but the moment when Tedros takes off her heels and they are now standing at an equal height represented to me that this was the thing she was searching for, someone who she could be real and honest with. I don't think Tedros can be trusted, as we've only seen him put on an act for her, but Jocelyn seems to think he could be the real deal. I just wanted to tell her to run, but alas, she was pulled into his orbit. Leading up to the final shot, Tedros pulls Jocelyn's robe over her head, almost mirroring a religious figure, or an idol, if you will, and tells her that he doesn't believe her when she sings. I'll get into the role music plays in a bit, but he goes on to ask her if she trusts him. As she obliges, he pulls the robe over her head and cuts a hole for her mouth, symbolizing the destruction of her ego and image, as if to erase these preconceived notions about her brand, as he urges Jocelyn to find her own voice. Of course, the imagery is provocative and might be too much for some people, but I believe it does a good job at conveying the intention of how he is pushing Jocelyn to become her own artist, which leads me to the role that the music played in this episode. What struck me as interesting upon my initial watch was how robotic and disconnected Jocelyn's single was, as she was rehearsing with her dancers. I can barely tell you what the lyrics were other than "I'm a freak," and it didn't make me feel much of anything. I have to give props to the creative direction of the show for capturing the hollow feeling of the song, because when you compare that to Tedros's introduction with music such as "Like a Prayer" that actually leaves an impact with you, it proves the point Jocelyn was trying to make when saying she didn't like her new single. I also love the thread of symbolizing idolatry in the dance performance by showcasing worship of Jocelyn, and the song choice of "Like a Prayer" to touch on the power, influence, and worship that music has on a broader audience. Tedros even makes the point that pop music is like a Trojan horse to make people feel, dance, and say whatever you want them to feel, move, and think like. This is a turning point for Jocelyn, and I could see her wheels turning as she was looking for how to make her music sound more real and authentic. And when Tedros says she should be more like Donna Summer, who actually sings from her heart and soul, we see a spark of realization in Jocelyn. I'm interested in hearing how her singles sound will progress throughout the series, and I wonder how they will capture a fuller and more vibrant sound for Jocelyn. Overall, I was pleasantly surprised by the first episode of The Idol. I have to give Lily Rose Depp her flowers for such a dynamic performance as Jocelyn, because she somehow captured the elusive nature of someone who doesn't know when to stop performing. I think for Jennie's American acting debut, she did a solid job, and I know she will excel in all of the dance performances she will be in. And while Sam Levinson has been the center of criticism for his direction in the past and on this show, I do have to admit he continues to tell stories so controversial, shocking, and compelling that I can't help but watch. That's all for episode 1 of The Idol. Let me know your thoughts and theories below. Don't forget to subscribe. Thanks for watching.